Did you know that over 30% of the people who graduate high school and over 40% of the people who graduate from college never pick up a book after they graduate? Now, when I first saw this stat, I was a little surprised, but then I started to think I used to be in that over 40% of people who graduated from college and never picked up another book. So on my channel, I normally talk about investing and strategies around investing to reach your financial destination. But in today's video, I want to just take a look at some of the books that I've read over the past several years that have helped to shape and develop the way that I approach not only investing, but just how I live my life in general. I truly believe that in order to continue to improve, you have to invest in yourself. And one of the ways that you can invest in yourself is by making sure that you stay sharp, keeping your mind sharp, and making sure that you're actually reading books that will help you to shape and transform your life. So the very first book that I'm going to be talking about in today's video is The Richest Man in Babylon. Now, I've said this before on previous videos that this is one of my favorite books of all time. Now, The Richest Man in Babylon is a tough read. It was written a very long time ago, and some of the language that they use in that book is a little hard to grasp in today's terminology. But even though it was written so long ago, all of the things, all the contents of that book still hold true. Now, the summary of this book is essentially there is a man in Babylon, and this person is a very rich man, and there is a person who wants to understand how did they obtain all of that wealth. And he walks this person through 7 life lessons that helped him to obtain his wealth. And if you go through this book and you actually read it and you understand those 7 steps, those 7 lessons, and apply them to your life today, that all of them still hold true. All of the things that they talk about in that book are things that you can apply today and they still work, even though the book was written so long ago. Now, the second book that I would recommend that you go out and you take a look at, and that is Atomic Habits. So Atomic Habits, another phenomenal book. And I've read this book twice, and I'm actually going to read it again, because if you're a reader and you read a book and you go back and you read it again, you always pick up something that you missed from the prior time that you read it. And Atomic Habits is essentially how to identify habits, both good habits and bad habits. So one thing that I learned after reading this book is that we all do things. We learn how to drive, for example, and let's just say you back your car out of a driveway. It's a very narrow spot that you're backing you out of your driveway. And the very first few times that you do it, you're kind of checking, you're looking over your shoulder, making sure you got room on both sides. But after you've done it 100 times, it's like you can get in your car, adjust your mirror, be on your phone, even though you shouldn't be doing that, and reverse all the way down your driveway without missing a beat. And that's because you picked up the habit. And the same thing happens whenever you have bad habits. And Atomic Habits helps you to identify how those habits are created and how to implement things to change a habit. So you may have a habit that may not necessarily be a bad habit, but you want to change it. Atomic Habits walks you through the steps and the things that you need to implement to do that. Now, I'm a procrastinator by nature. I have procrastinated so much on the things that I've done throughout my life, and I know that about myself. So one of the things that I had to do to break that habit was to break things down, compartmentalize them into small steps in order to make sure that I can get the things that I need done. So I'll do A first, and if I don't finish it, that's fine, because I know that I've broken that down into 3 different chunks to help me actually complete the job that I want to do. Now, for some people, that may be crazy, but for me, it works. The next book that I would recommend is How to Win Friends and Influence People. Now, if you work in corporate America, you know that corporate America is like an extension of high school sometimes, right? There's always the person who walks around the office that gossips. There's always the person who is always busy, even though they don't have anything to do, but they're always busy and the work that they're doing is the most important. And then you have the people that's all they care about. They have no life outside the job. So the job means everything to them. And then you also have people that come to work and they're just like, you know what? I don't care about this. I just want to get my job done and be done with everything. And that's fine. I mean, that's just how life is. But how to win friends and influence people talks about the different personality types that each of these people have and how you can actually communicate with them to win them over. Now, I'm not saying that you need to go out there and you need to reform yourself to fit to what someone wants you to be, but in life, you have to be extremely strategic of how you operate and how you work with certain people, especially in places like corporate America, but just in life in general. And being able to understand what makes someone tick and what makes someone move can not only help you succeed, but it's a good way to move. And How to Win Friends and Influence People has been around for a while. It's another fantastic book that I would recommend that you take a look at. And these are all books that I've read. These are all books that I've read over the course of my life more than once. And it's one that I would suggest that you take a look at. All right, so let's move on to the fourth book, and that is The Millionaire Next Door. Now, this is another great read. It's another book that I've read several times. And the gist of The Millionaire Next Door is it walks through how everyday people, janitors, teachers, firefighters, policemen, can all work jobs that are great jobs that we need in society, but they don't make a ton of money. Most teachers don't make a lot of money. Most police officers aren't paid an exorbitant amount of money unless you're in a larger city like New York City or Los Angeles, but the cost of living kind of levels that out and evens out the amount of money that you're bringing in. But essentially, this book talks about how those people can work jobs and never make, $150,000, $200,000 a year, but they retire with millions. And this is all achieved by not keeping up with the Joneses and investing over a long period of time and living within your means. And this book walks through several different types of people that follow this specific workflow, and whenever they're ready to retire, they retire with millions. All right, so the fifth book that I would recommend that you take a look at is called Tax-Free Wealth by Tom Wheelwright. Now, this is kind of a difficult read if you don't understand our tax law and tax strategy in general. And when I first read that book, I didn't have a deep understanding and knowledge of our tax code, but it helps to break down how being a business owner and an investor gives you tax advantages that you cannot get or qualify if you are a W-2 worker. If you work a W-2 job, a standard 9 to 5 where you get a paycheck, you have a limited number of things that you can do to help reduce the amount that you pay in taxes. You can invest in a 401k, you can invest in a health savings account, you can invest in a flex savings account. Of course, if you contribute to your medical fund for medical benefits, dental, vision, all of those things offset the amount that you pay in taxes. But if you're a business owner or an investor, you can write off so much more that can bring your taxes down to as close to zero as possible. In some cases, even zero. Now, as you start to mature and you start to earn a little bit more money over the course of your life, this is definitely a book you want to check out, because I think that most people have no idea how our tax code works. And being able to read through this book will help you get one step closer to being one of the people that actually do understand how our tax code works. All right, let's go on to book number 6, which is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Now, this is a book that I needed. I needed this book back in my late 20s and my early 30s. And this book essentially walks you through kind of the psychology of how we make things out to be bigger than they need to be. We stress about the little things. We stress about the big things. We stress about the things that we can't change. We stress about the things that bother us. And I fall into that category. I stress about all of those things. And this book actually walks you down the path of trying to understand A, why, and B, starting to get you to understand that if you can't influence something or change something, then why do you care about it? Like, don't stress yourself out about things that don't matter. And I'm one of those people. It was hard for me to get over the hump of that. And I still have problems with that today sometimes, because I like to have things a very particular way. But this book actually helped me to understand that and open my eyes a little bit, to help me at least start to go down that path of not really caring about things. And I've seen a big change in my life over the years after I've read this book. So if you haven't read The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, I would absolutely recommend that you read this one as well. All right, so the seventh book that I'll recommend is one that a lot of people recommend, and that is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Now, if you haven't read Rich Poor Dad or you haven't heard of it, it essentially walks you through the life of Robert Kiyosaki, where he talks about his poor dad, which is his real dad, and how he approached finances and building wealth, and his rich dad, which really wasn't his dad, it was his friend's dad, and how he approached building wealth through acquiring rental properties, commercial properties, as well as other assets along the way. It's a good book to read so you can understand how in life there's generally two tracks that you can take. His poor dad's track, which is he went to college, he had a regular job, he spent money on cars and vacations, and even though he made money, he was quote unquote poor. And then his rich dad, who didn't go to college, but invested in properties and other types of investments, was able to be rich. All right, so that's 7 books that I would recommend that you read. I've went through each one of these books at least twice, and a lot of them way more than that. And on this channel, I normally talk about how I'm investing and my approach to building out my net worth and bringing you guys along on the journey. But these books help to build the foundation of my approach and how I approach things today. Leave a comment down below. What do you think about the 7 books that I mentioned in today's video? And what are some books that you would recommend that people read? Leave a comment down below and let me know.